Hi, I'm Richard Edlin with Business for America. Thanks everyone so much for joining us this morning, this afternoon to discuss Operation Vote Safe and Business for America's effort to help ensure a safe, secure, and credible election in November of 2020. Today we have two Secretaries of State and the Chief of Staff of another state, and I'll introduce everyone in a moment. And we also have two companies with us today, both of whom are contributing to Operation Vote Safe. And just real quickly, I think as everyone knows, this election is taking place in an unprecedented time with the pandemic. It has posed tremendous challenges to state and local election officials across the country, many of whom are finding themselves having to make pretty dramatic changes in how people are voting. Many traditional poll workers have decided to stay home and not jeopardize their health by serving in public. Many more people, millions of more people will be voting by mail this time. And as I noted, this is all taking place in the midst of a pandemic. And there are also questions about the solvency and efficiency of the postal system. Not to mention that Congress still has not allocated any additional funding to help states run their elections. So that sounds like a bit of a challenge. And in response to that challenge, Business for America has established a nonpartisan national program called Operation Vote Safe. And my colleague, Sarah Bonk, or Bonk, will be describing that in a bit more detail. So let me just quickly introduce each of the speakers, and then each of them will take a few moments to describe their efforts. And our first presenter will be the Secretary of State of California, Alex Padilla. Mr. Padilla serves as the Secretary of State in the nation's largest state and will be describing their Democracy at Work program. And Mr. Padilla has been the Secretary since 2014. Our next Secretary of State who will speak is Kim Wyman. Kim is in Washington State and has been the Secretary of State there since 2012. And our next presenter is Sari Stevens. Sari is the Deputy Secretary of State and the Chief of Staff, actually the Chief of Staff for the Secretary of State, Kathy Boockvar, in Pennsylvania. And then we have two business colleagues with us today, Jonathan Perri from Lime and Mark Abrials from Avocado Green Brands. And both of them are helping Secretaries of State in different parts of the country by providing product. Let me now turn it over to Bonk and describe Operation Vote Safe in a little bit more detail and some of the other objectives we have in mind.
Great. Thank you, Richard. And thank you to our panelists for joining us today. And thank you to our guests as well. It is a crazy time right now. We're all sort of taking a breath here this morning to think about the election and think about how we can engage the business community in helping it to run more smoothly. I founded Business for America on the idea that the interests of the public and the interests of business are aligned on having a well-functioning representative democracy and elections that we can really trust. And chaotic elections and hyperpartisanship and polarization, that hurts all of us. We have a shared interest in having a system that can, where decisions can be made and we can move forward together as a country. So we are really grateful for all the businesses that are already supporting the election this year in a variety of ways, whether that is giving time to vote to their employees, helping to get out the vote with their customers and their communities. And we're excited to be laying the groundwork for further action by business. There's an urgent need this year for support and unfortunate circumstances that we need to do this work. But this is what we're facing right now. It's a crisis, but also an opportunity for business to take action and make a difference. Just to give you a little bit of the backstory here, there was a bipartisan study by the Brennan Center for Justice and the R Street Institute and University of Pittsburgh They looked at a number of states to say, what is it going to cost to run this election during a pandemic and to do it safely? Make sure everybody who needs an absentee ballot is able to get that. Make sure everybody who goes to a polling place can do so safely. And that also all the kind of cyber protection that we need at this election would also be in place. The number that they came up with was $4 billion. Now, $400 million was allocated in March in the coronavirus relief package, and that left us, what, $3.6 billion short. So that's what we're facing. And we've been speaking to a number of state election officials. Everybody's been really lovely and eager to engage the business community. And what we heard from one, and I won't mention which state it was, but they said they feel like they're looking between sofa cushions, right? It shouldn't be like this, but that's the reality of the situation because of the economic situation, and states don't have the same amount of income that they did before the pandemic and the economic crisis that we're facing. So at the same time, I'd like to assure everybody listening and watching that election officials are really trying hard to do the right thing. There probably is no way for us to get through this 100% as smoothly as we would like, but I can assure you that from everybody that we've spoken with, no one wants to have the hanging chads of 2020. For those of you who are old enough to remember the situation in Florida where we spent a long time waiting to find out the results of the 2000 election due to some pieces of paper that didn't get punched through on a ballot. Well, you know, what's that going to look like this year? It's hard to know, but if we don't have the support necessary, the results of the election may be called into question. So how do we address that? What we're doing is we have picked a number of states. We're currently active in 8 states. We may do more, but at least we're going to see what we can do in those 8. And we've offered assistance to the Secretaries of State and their teams to help make things run more smoothly. So the thing we're hearing, number one, is that poll workers and facilities are the greatest needs. So obviously businesses can invite their employees, invite their communities to participate, and they can help get the word out about those needs. And they may be able to offer facilities. We've actually had a company, Patagonia, is offering some of their facilities, their stores, to help with election operations and drop boxes. The next thing has to do with PPE and supplies. There are still states that need masks and face shields and sneeze guards, but they also need tape to mark off the floors and ensure social distancing rules are adhered to. Lots and lots of things can be provided. We can even use some equipment to help deal with this massive influx of absentee ballots, mail processing equipment to get them opened and to count them and stamp them would be really helpful in a couple of places. And lastly, looking at assistance with communications and logistics, online training, technology, sort of soft skills and services that businesses can provide. We have one business that is interested in doing PSAs for a number of states. They have some communications channels where they can publish them, but they can also share them with others. We have voter guides being built and a number of other efforts in terms of getting out the vote message to employees, customers, communities to say, things have changed this year. We want you to vote safely. If you're going to vote in person, please vote early. And if you can, to not go on election day when it's going to be at its busiest. And if you're going to vote absentee, here's some things you need to know. So when you look at the country as a whole and you see millions of masks are needed, you know, hundreds of thousands of poll workers are needed, it feels a little overwhelming. But your company may be able to help meet the needs for an entire small county, for instance, or in your community, help secure the polling locations in the areas where you operate. That frees resources for those election officials to focus on other things and put their funds into other things. So it really does make a difference. Thanks for being part of hearing about our effort, and we're excited to work with you going forward. Richard, I'll hand it back to you.
Great, good, thank you, Bonk. Good, and by the way, if people have questions, you can use the Q&A function, and I see we have 2 questions already, so thank you. I'll get to those as we can. Let me turn to Secretary of State Padilla in California. And Alex, thanks for joining us again. We appreciate your time. Secretary, you have established a pretty pioneering program called Democracy at Work in California. I know as a huge state, you have many different needs, and many, given the variety of locations in the state. So tell us a bit about how the private sector can help you and your colleagues across the state.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you and Sarah for your tremendous leadership in putting all this together. And Sarah in particular for, I wouldn't say stealing my thunder, but covering a lot of the important ground that we wanted to emphasize today. But Richard, there's that old adage that democracy is not a spectator sport, right? The health of our democracy is dependent on the level of citizen participation in all of that. And I think it also applies to how we're able to maintain free and fair elections, including, yes, protecting the integrity of the process, but making it as accessible as possible to all eligible citizens. And that too requires an all hands on deck in any typical election. But as you've all laid out, this is an unprecedented election that we're getting ready for, given the impacts of COVID-19 and everything else going on in our country right now. So I think 2020 is going to go down in history as Exhibit A of needing all hands on deck to sustain our democracy. And so it's in that spirit that the California Secretary of State's office has a Democracy at Work program, where we partner officially with both public and private sector employers, small, medium, and large, to utilize, your relationships, frankly, with your employees and with your customers and with your members in your communications platforms, to put out the official nonpartisan information about how to go about registering to vote and how to go about voting, what your options are in your particular state and jurisdiction, with friendly occasional reminders. And why is this helpful? Because if letters and postcards from the Secretary of State in your state was enough to get everybody to vote, we would be at 100% voter participation a long time ago. But we're not. Government has its role to not just oversee the administration of elections, but get the good information out there. But clearly there's a role for everybody to play, whether it's an individual leader, a business employer, or an organization like Business for America. So frankly, as you're rolling out the Vote Safe initiative nationally, I'm proud to announce Business for America as an official Democracy at Work partner in the state of California. Again, Sarah kind of went through a lot of specifics of what each county is in need of, suggestions and offers for hosting voting locations. If you can help us get the word out on recruiting poll workers, a lot of that information available in California under vote.ca.gov. Good information resource for voters and businesses alike. I know on a national level, powerthepolls.org is a platform for people who are interested in serving as poll workers. They can sign up and then be connected with their state and county officials to kind of follow through on that. And so helping get the word out is important. The other specific item I guess I would ask for everybody this morning as Vote Safe is kicking off is to continue to encourage your members and the public at large to look at the official reliable sources of election information, that being your local elections office and your Secretary of State's office. You have great ones here on this call today, Secretary Wyman in Washington, Secretary Bookbar's office in Pennsylvania. Part of voting safe is not just making sure that we have options for voting, whether it's by mail or in person. If you vote in person, make sure that we're staying safe. But the fundamental information that voters are going off of is trustworthy. We know there's a lot of misinformation and disinformation, especially on social media these days, about the political process and about being able to cast your ballot. So the more we can encourage the public to trust official, reliable sources of information, I think the better off we're all going to be, not just for participation's sake, but for confidence in the process and confidence in results come November. So thank you again for the partnership, and looking forward to a lot of work in the next 70 days and beyond.
Great. Good, Alex, thank you. And I know you're going to need to leave us here in about 15 minutes. So let me ask a quick question about disinformation, misinformation, and is there a role for the private sector to play in supporting your effort? efforts in ensuring people get access to reliable sources of information.
Right. No, absolutely. And I think Secretary Wyman will vouch for the Trusted Info Project under the National Association of Secretaries of State. So this is not just a California thing. It's a national, call for voters to rely on official, trustworthy information sources about participation. Why is it critical? We learned a lot in 2016, and we continue to learn a lot about, threats to the public confidence in our elections, not just from foreign adversaries, but a lot of domestic sources as well. And it's not about being partisan. It's not about are we helping swing it one way or the other. It's about fundamental confidence in free and fair elections, the very bedrock of our democracy. So there may be a lot of well-intentioned people out there trying to share information about participating, but they don't always get it right. And we certainly know that there's a lot of bad actors out there seeking to exploit social media platforms to sow chaos and create confusion and undermine confidence in the process. So the best thing that we can do is be proactive in getting the official trustworthy information out there. Before you retweet or share a post that might have caught your attention, that's good. It's a good idea to just stop and think, wait a minute, is this real? Does it sound too good to be true? Because if it sounds too good to be true, it might be. And just, lean on amplifying the voices of local elections offices, the Secretary of State's offices, the people that are going to provide that official, reliable information about participating in the process.
Right. Good. Thank you. Thank you. So let me turn to Mark Abrials from Avocado Green Brands, and Mark's about to describe the company's engagement in Operation Vote Save. So for those of you from the private sector listening, this is a great example of how your company can participate in helping to fulfill some of the needs that election officials have. So Mark, thank you for joining us, and I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. Glad to be here. Well, I'm one of the founders of Avocado Green Brands. We make organic certified mattresses and bedding in California, just outside of Los Angeles. As a B Corp, Avocado has always been a mission-driven brand, so sustainability and social responsibility are at the core of our business. So when the pandemic hit, especially back in early March, I'm proud to say that we were one of the first brands that pivoted from making products to actually making face masks. To date, we've distributed nearly 500,000 masks to individuals and organizations across the country. But true to our brand, the face masks that we've made have they're actually organic certified, they're actually reusable, they're even biodegradable, so they don't contribute to the plastic waste problem that so many other masks have. So we're proud to donate 15,000 masks, organic face masks, to help in-person voting be both safe and accessible, and to help the citizens of California carry out one of their most important civic responsibilities, obviously, voting. So thank you.
Great, Mark, thank you. And we will be back in touch with you as to exactly where those are going, but we've been in contact with colleagues of Secretary Padilla's staff, and we'll be back to you soon. So thank you for your contribution.
Thank you.
Let me go a little bit north now to Washington State, and Kim Wyman is the Secretary of State there. And we've been working with her and her team over the past few months. And Kim, if you could describe for us some of the supply needs and challenges of election officials in Washington State and how the private sector can help there.
Well, thank you, Richard. And I do really want to thank Richard and Bonk for all the work that Business for America has done. I just think this is such a natural partnership and such a great opportunity to not only highlight, how businesses support our states, but connect them to a fundamental right that every American has and has guaranteed, that the right to choose their leaders and representative government. So it's an exciting prospect, and certainly one that's needed. Washington is a little different than many states in the country, but I think it really points to this opportunity for companies across the country to be involved with their states or their local election officials, because each state has its own way of doing elections. Right now, there are 5 states like Washington that are completely mail-in states, and 5 states that are, 4 or 5 states, 5 states I believe, that are transitioning to complete vote by mail for the November election, like Secretary Padilla was just mentioning in California. So each state is going to have its own sort of mix of in-person voting and voting by mail. And it may be, like my state, a majority where 2% of our voters show up in person, or it may be a state where the majority of the people are going to be showing up at the polls. It's hard to say as we sit here with COVID to know how voters are going to choose where they're going to vote. And I think that's the biggest challenge for election officials. When I look here at my state, we have about 4.7 million registered voters. We just had a primary election 2 weeks ago that had 55% turnout. The last time we had turnout that high was 1964. So I know we're on the edge of an extraordinary general election, and I think that's true across the country. There's going to be, we're anticipating between 80 and 90% turnout here in Washington. So I think that most states are trying to brace for that kind of turnout. And what that means for the business community is an opportunity to help us with supplies. So in my state, it seems counterintuitive, but my county election officials need PPE. They still do. They're still scrambling to get enough for their in-person voting opportunities for voters, but also for the vast array of workers that we have to employ to help count and process all of those mail-in ballots. That's a common one. Another one is personnel. We have over 450, or right around 450 ballot drop box sites right now as we sit here today, and I anticipate by election day it will be much closer to 500. And all of those boxes across the state need to be closed at 8 o'clock promptly on election night. And I know that counties are going to need extra help doing that task. And it's from simple tasks like that to helping in our ballot processing centers. And we're right now surveying our 39 counties to get those exact needs and really try to connect with the businesses here in Washington. And I think that the needs that Washington have are really mirrored across the country, and each individual state has unique things that they may need. Another need that I know is coming up for us is transportation. So unfortunately, Lime bikes probably won't do it, but trucks to pick up ballots from those drop sites, because those sites are open for 20 days before election day. And we have teams that go out and empty them. When we're going to have close to 4.5 million ballots cast, and most of those are going to be in drop boxes, we're going to need transportation and logistics. So the needs are unique, but we just look forward to this partnership and think it's really going to make a difference.
Great. Kim, thank you. Say a little bit more, if you would, about the type of training that's required for someone to be a poll worker. We've been getting questions from our colleagues about, whether an employee can volunteer for 4 hours, they need to volunteer for 3 weeks, do they get paid, et cetera.
Wonderful. Thank you, Richard. That's a great prompt. I should have got that on my remarks. It's all over the map, and I think there's a wide variety of opportunities here. We have some pretty simple, low-skill tasks like picking up ballots from a ballot drop box, and that's, like I said, in our state is going to be about a 20-day window of shift work, probably, of a couple hours here and there, going out in teams of 2 and emptying those boxes and accounting for the ballots and turning them in. To election night, the closing of those boxes, as I mentioned. But in terms of the actual voting period, we have about 20 days before election day and about 20 days after election day, where we're processing this huge volume of ballots. Like I said, we're anticipating somewhere in the range of 4.5 million ballots. Half of those will come in before election day, and half of them will come in after, or election week, before and after. And so they're going to be working, and these are opportunities for people to use their skills like computer skills to check signatures and process ballots that way, to physically opening and getting ballots ready for tabulation and operating those tabulation machines. So it depends on the size and the scale and scope of the county, but there's a wide range of skilled and unskilled tasks that we really need help with. And it's a mix of paid positions and volunteer positions. So again, if corporations could, or businesses could allow workers to work for a period of time, maybe a few days or a week or a few hours a day or whatever it is, I'm sure that they could be put to work in election offices very quickly.
Great, good, thank you. Good, and I'll just mention that we are working with the Greater Seattle Business Association in Washington State and look to work with other business groups there. So if there are companies or organizations in Washington State that are interested in helping the Secretary's office, they should feel free to contact Business for America. Kim, thank you. And let me turn now to Jonathan Perri from Lime. And Lime has a number of interesting initiatives. And Jonathan, why don't you tell us about how you're engaging your employees as well as making scooters available to the voting public?
Sure, happy to. And thank you, Richard and Sarah, and to all the leadership of the Secretaries of State on this call, and always working to increase civic engagement and break down barriers to people casting their votes safely in their states. So, Lime is a relatively new company, and we're founded on a commitment to providing sustainable, accessible transportation options. With over 15 million app downloads and 130 million rides taken globally, we really see an opportunity to use our platform to help people register to vote, and also to get out and vote and get to the polls safely, whether that's casting their vote by mail or in person. In 2018, we provided free scooter rides to the polls, helping to break down some transportation barriers. That promo was actually 10% of all rides taken on election day with Wyman used that promotion. So we're going to be bringing back that initiative, providing free scooter rides on election day in all of the US cities where we operate. And with COVID's impact on public transportation, we hope that this helps provide a free, open-aired and socially distant way to get to polling places. Additionally, we're using our app to promote voter registration, and we've partnered with When We All Vote, nonpartisan organization that's co-chaired by Michelle Obama, to make it easy for our riders to actually register right within the Lime app after they've completed a trip. And then additionally, we'll be participating in both the first ever Vote Early Day to help voters understand their options for voting early, to avoid lines in crowded polling places. And we're also joining both the Operation Vote Safe and Power the Polls to help raise the alarm to our employees and our riders about the need for poll workers. So we package a lot of these into a campaign called Roll Call, and you can go to limetothe.polls.com to read more about some of the other partnerships and initiatives where we've put together for this year.
Great. Good, Jonathan, thank you. And say briefly, if you would, what within Lime's sort of corporate culture has led the company to take such an active stance on this issue?
Sure. Well, we're a people-first city company. We're founded on providing affordable, sustainable transportation and to seeing cities that are really built for active transportation and centered around community rather than just cars. And so social impact and sustainability have always been at the core of our mission. And we see a particular responsibility to help get the word out about any attacks on accessibility to voting, as well as just increasing opportunities for people to register to vote through our platform.
Great, thank you. Good, good. Well, let's move east and to Pennsylvania. And Sari Stevens is the Chief of Staff for Secretary of State Kathy Boockvar there. And Pennsylvania, I think, as all of us know, is considered a swing state, a bellwether state, has had a lot of changes take place in how people are voting, particularly since 2016 and 2018 as well, and a number of significant legislative reforms were adopted in 2019. So Sari, I know you're barely sleeping these days, trying to keep up with all the changes. But tell us a bit about the steps the Secretary of State and county officials are taking there in the Commonwealth and how the private sector can help those efforts.
Sure. Hope you can hear me okay. Thank you,
Yes.
Sarah and Rich, for having me on, and the Secretary sends her regards. We sent her on a mini vacation, sort of, which she's going to need because the next 2 months are going to be brutal, as we all know. So I'm the Chief of Staff for the Secretary. For folks who don't know, in Pennsylvania, we had the biggest electoral changes, statutory changes in 100 years at the end of 2019. And I won't enumerate them all, but one of the biggest was allowing for no excuse mail-in balloting. And so just to give you a sense, in our primary in early June, we had 17 times more people sign up to vote by mail than had in the previous presidential primary. So more individuals voted by mail than voted in person. Now, of course, we had the confluence of COVID-19. We also had, every county had brand new voting machines, paper trail verifiable voting machines, which originally we thought that would be our biggest hurdle. And then we had mail-in balloting, which we were very excited about. And then we had COVID-19, which we weren't excited about, but really helped to boost the turnout of mail-in balloting. And it went relatively smoothly. I have to say, you know, no locusts came, and, you know, we survived, and there were minor hiccups. So we were really pleased, but obviously the volume that we're looking at in the fall will be far greater. We did see very high turnout numbers considering all of those different factors, higher than we would have expected. And so in Pennsylvania, we're so pleased with these amazing partnerships with businesses. The Department of State in Pennsylvania also oversees lobbyists, and we're partnering with lobbyists, we're partnering with you know, general stores, we're partnering with the athletic community. Really, it feels like a moment where everybody's pitching in, and we need it. It feels like a collective good is necessary to see this election off, and we can all, you can always support democracy. Nonpartisan democracy is something that we can all be for. So we're so pleased to partner with Business for America. So we will have in-person voting as well as mail-in voting. And so we need to staff 8,000 polling locations with PPE. So we've already gotten some good news from Business for America and Patagonia as far as helping along with those endeavors. Anything else helps. It frees up resources that we need in other places. The allusion to checking between the couch cushions, absolutely. Making decisions and hoping the money comes in. It's a trying time, and in a very high stakes election cycle. We have a very cool campaign called Ready to Vote 2020. And we have a whole toolkit on our website. We've been encouraging anyone, whether you're a legislator, whether you are an advocacy organization, whether you're a business, everything's pre-populated. It's newsletter content, it's memes and graphics and tweets, and you can just come and steal it. Actually, we've had 2 other states completely steal all of our content, and we're fine with it. It's great. We're happy to create it, and we want everyone to use it to the best of their ability. I really think one of the ways that the business community can be an advocate, whether it's not PPE or space or poll worker recruitment or offering the day off, which are all really, really awesome things that we need and would be appreciative of, is spreading the word. Because I ran a nonprofit organization for 15 years, and I can tell you the people that I worked with, and there was a lot of them, they trusted me. And there's a lot of people that trust your businesses. that may not know even what the Department of State is. And so getting out the message, particularly around security and safety of mail-in voting, again, to push back on misinformation, to encourage people to apply early. One of the things that we saw in the primary was this huge crush of mail-in ballots. And of course, Corona had something to do with it. But we were getting hundreds of thousands in the last week. And that's hard for the counties. So the earlier we can ask them to apply, and the earlier they can get it back in the mail. So apply early, you can do it online, return your ballot as soon as possible, whether it's in person or by mail. That helps the counties, takes the pressure off the USPS. So really hitting home on that message would be fantastic, because you have a reach into your clientele that we may not. So being that verified voice is something that we would really appreciate. We're also running, so I mentioned we're running a media campaign, so you can steal any of our materials. If you're in Pennsylvania or you have outlets in Pennsylvania, please feel free to visit the website. Rich, I'm sure you can send out the materials afterwards. Happy to hear feedback, anything that you would like to put out that we haven't created already. We've got fun videos, things as far down as what it's like to open a ballot and fill it out and put it in the mail, things as simple as that really give people confidence in the mail-in voting process, which for us in Pennsylvania is very new. And I think I'll stop there. I'm happy to take questions. I'll just say, I've never seen, I've worked a lot of elections, but this year is like nothing else. And the way that the whole community, whether it's a business or an association or government workers, have stepped up to make this happen, I have full confidence that we'll have a successful and safe, secure election in the fall.
Good. Sari, thank you so much. And we have been able to get the state of New Hampshire to steal your the Ready to Vote toolkit. So Great. They are issuing their own version on Wednesday, and we're working with New Hampshire Businesses for Social Responsibility to do that. I will also mention that in Pennsylvania, our state director, Joe Petrucci, has put together a business version of the Ready to Vote toolkit, which has all the same material, but is a bit condensed and talks about the opportunities for businesses to support the education of their employees about how to vote this year. Sari, let me ask just a quick question. Pennsylvania is such a diverse state. You have, many metro urban centers, but also much of the population lives in rural communities. So how is that presenting a challenge, and how are you trying to ensure that all residents have access to the same information and the same set of resources?
So in Pennsylvania, we're a non-centralized election. So the Department of State partners with counties, but the counties are responsible for running their elections. And so we're in constant communication, especially now, understanding what they need. And so right now we have a poll out, about to be finished, where we will gather information about where they're lacking poll workers, where they're lacking polling locations, and then we'll share that information with you. We'll share it with the athletic community and state athletic community, and be the facilitator to make sure that they have what they need, because it may be a tiny county that lost a major polling location and they only have a few. It may be Philadelphia, where they have hundreds and hundreds, and they have a greater need, but it doesn't mean that that smaller county isn't also in need. And there may be a business there that's happy and willing to step in. And I mean, you guys are the business people, but I think it's good business PR to show that you're helping, helping voters be able to vote. So we're in constant contact, and that loop will continue as time goes on, and we identify needs and pass them on to all of our partners.
Great, good. Thank you. Kim, or Sari, I think either of you would be equipped to address this, which is about funding. And, as Bonk said earlier, monies were appropriated under the CARES Act. And part of the debate in the Senate, in particular the US Senate, has been, whether all those funds have been spent. So briefly, do both of your states need additional monies? And what can you say about the likelihood of any additional federal support being provided?
Go ahead. I'll let you go, Sari.
And that was not a trick question.
No, Secretary, do you want to start?
Okay, sure. You know, here in Washington, absolutely, we could use additional funds because just as we're getting closer to the reality of the general election, you start realizing that you need to add drop boxes, you need to add voting assistance centers, you may be adding just more throughput in your drive up curbside absentee ballot pickup windows, whatever they are. We had, like I said, a primary 2 weeks ago, and that was just such a great dry run with 55% turnout. They were able to really try their processes out, not try them out, use them, and could see where they needed to fine tune. And I think that when you do that, it always comes down to resources, and what you would like to do and what you can do are not always the same. We did put the money on the ground with our county, and they have put that to use. And I believe I think $10 million that we received in the CARES Act funding has already been spent by our counties or is earmarked for planned expenditures. And I think across the country, the downside of Congress taking so long to allocate this money is counties and local governments couldn't invest in equipment and things that would have actually made the election more efficient and would have processed ballots in a better way. They didn't have the funding to do it. And now we're so close to election day, even though for a lot of people, I'm sure it feels like it's a long run up. Just listening to Sari talk was stressing me out. It's like, oh my gosh, you did all that this year. And we're doing the same thing here in Washington. We've had a great deal of change, and I think every state is feeling that pressure. So money is going to certainly help at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sari, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, we are so grateful. The counties are so grateful for all of the resources that we received. But I think the Secretary's point about running out of time is a real concern. I mean, people think the election is a long way away, but obtaining a scanner, a high-speed scanner that you need, that you realize that in your primary that you didn't have enough to make the processing faster. I mean, these are technical things that regular people don't think about, but they cost money. And if you don't know if you have the funds, you can't get the high-speed scanner, and then there's no scanners left because it's too close to the election. So I can promise any dollar that comes, or any resource or any donation that comes, really does help free up other funds to put into other areas of election administration. I mean, I am, just to give you a granular example, our call volume, I don't know if this is the same in the other states, was at election day levels, like general election day levels, 5,000 calls a day for the entire primary, the entire time. So we had to add 45 people, and we have to pay them all. And that's, you know, boring, and I'm sure nobody cares about it, but we had to find the money for that, because otherwise voters were going to be on the phones and not getting the information they needed, and we weren't going to be there to reassure them that vote by mail was safe. And so it's little things like that. Every time masks come in and they peel away money that we would have otherwise had to spend on PPE, because we are committed to providing in all of our polling locations, it gives me a little bit more money that I can put to people on the phones. And so it's just one whole cycle.
Great.
So yes, and I don't think that there's a lot of optimism that we will see federal funds, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
Right. Thank you. Good. Well, let me wrap up here by asking Mark or Jonathan if there's anything else they'd like to add from, you know, the private sector perspective, and, you know, maybe a call to get your colleagues from different industries involved in Operation Vote Safe. So Mark, anything you'd like to close with?
No, I mean, I'm excited to be involved in this, and also to have a better understanding of the scope of the need, because, you know, there's of course probably more that we could do and more that we could share with other allied organizations to get other people involved. So, you know, like I said, we're proud to participate, but it's also been an eye-opening experience. So we'll see what more we can also do.
Great, thank you. Good, and Jonathan?
Yeah, just absolutely echo that. And, you know, I already mentioned When We All Vote, but that's a wonderful organization for folks to check out for resources and to get registered. The Brennan Center was brought up as well. There are advocacy actions that people can take to help protect voting nationwide and make your voice heard in that way as well. The Brennan Center has a lot of resources on their site for you to take action in a variety of ways. And then I also have to highlight Head Count, which is a wonderful nonprofit organization that's doing voter registration nationwide. I used to be a volunteer with them, registering voters at concerts throughout California when we could go to concerts. So, you know, there's a lot of wonderful resources out there from organizations that are working very hard. So go check out those groups and support them however you can.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. Yep, so just a few things I'll just close with. September 1st is National Poll Worker Day. And that is an opportunity to really amplify the needs that Sari and Kim and Alex noted about the hundreds, if not thousands, of poll workers that are needed across the country. I believe in Pennsylvania, 35,000 poll workers are needed. And then thirdly, Operation Vote Safe, as we mentioned, is a nonpartisan national program. So Business for America is active right now in 8 states. Those include California and Colorado, Florida, Georgia, New Hampshire, Ohio, Pennsylvania, and Washington. We hope to initiate efforts elsewhere. And if you're interested in helping us get on the ground in other key states, please contact us. And then finally, we really do welcome everybody's involvement, and we very much appreciate our partnerships, both with the private companies on the call and many others that we've been working with over the past several weeks, and also to our election officials and the hard and very important work that they're pursuing. So I will leave it there. We thank you so much. We're going to be holding additional webinars in the coming weeks, and hope everyone has a great rest of the day and take good care. Thank you.